talk on the learning environment and the training climate and training aids. This is a very pertinent topic in the contemporary modern world. The effectiveness of any kind of a training program has a very direct consequence to the climate settings within which it is conducted. Why it is important? Because the tutor has to ensure that the various components of the climate are well coordinated and provide a congenial ambience for the training. Unless and until we have the proper climate settings, the consequence, the takeaways and the outcomes of the training program would be in problem. So that is why we say that if we need the training program to be very effective, we need to work upon the climate settings, we have to work upon the ambience for the training. Now taking it forward, training is not merely a scientific approach, but the art of teaching has a lot to do with its effectiveness. The trainer has to apply his or her ingenuity to get the better achievement of the objectives. Now we are going to talk about the learning environment and the training climate. An effective trainer creates a positive learning climate by offering a relevant learning which motivates the learner through participative and active involvement in the learning process. It offers the variety of learning experiences and the positive feedback, personal concerns and an atmosphere of the safety. Now, recognizing as individuals with unique backgrounds, experiences and the learning needs, maintaining their self-esteem with high expectations for themselves and the trainer, taking personal needs into the considerations. The involvement of the learners create a positive learning climate by allowing the participants to provide the input regarding the schedules, activities and the other events. Now, asking the questions and soliciting the feedback, brainstorming and encouraging discussions. Planning hands-on work, group and individual, protects and the classroom activities learners can definitely be involved. Now, use of a variety of learning methods creates a very positive learning climate which include audio-visual aids, illustrated lectures, demonstrations, brainstorming, small group activities, group discussions, role plays, case studies and of course when you talk about certain guest speakers. So these were the variety of the aspects and the variety of the learning methods which can be very helpful in creating a very congenial ambience for the learning and a positive learning climate. So now we talk about an effective trainer. An effective trainer helps to create a positive learning climate by using a variety of techniques for providing a positive feedback like giving a verbal praise either in front of other participants or in private, using positive responses during the questioning, recognizing appropriate skills while coaching and letting the participants know how they are progressing towards achieving the learning objectives, treating the participants as individuals by using the participant name as possible as often, involving all participants as often as possible, treating participants with respect, allowing the participants to share the information with the others. Now, creating a positive learning climate requires definitely a lot of planning. It requires a work planning on the part of the trainer as well. Now, we talk upon the training and organizational climate. The training being a subset of the organizational climate is very important to understand the organizational climate. Organizational climate is a summary perception which people have about the organization. It is the general expression what an organization is all about. It is a manifestation of the attitude of the organizational members towards the organization itself. An organization attracts and keeps the people who fit into the climate so to succeed for a long period of time. Organizational climate is, basically enduring quality, if you want, of its internal environment, which is experienced by its members, and it influences their behavior and can be described in terms of the values of a particular set of characteristics of the organization. Now, the characteristics of the good organizational climate is as follows. Now, we talk about what are the basic good qualities of the good organizational climate is all about. So, following are the major characteristics of a good and a healthy organizational climate. The first is, there is a tendency at all the levels of the organization to treat people as the most important resource. The top management is particularly careful to ensure that there is a perception that developing the competencies in the employees is the job of every manager, number one, and followed by the manager exhibit faith in the competencies of the people to change and acquire new capabilities. So, there is a tendency of the open communications also, followed by the human resources show a general tendency to take calculated risk, and there is a general climate of the trust within the organization. The employees feel themselves as a part of the system and are helpful to each other, and the organizational members have definitely a very important team spirit. Now, when you talk about the top management does not exhibit any kind of bias. They are objective in evaluating the process. The activities of the organization are development oriented, and of course, the organizations differ widely on these aspects, and so does the commitment of the personnel working there. Now, in the long run, the organizations which do not develop a congenial work climate, they do not withstand the pressures of the external environment. Now, we talk about the physical training climate. The training climate has basically two components, the physical and psychological. The physical settings shall comprise of the room where training is being conducted, and the furniture, the air conditioning facilities, the curtains, the tapestry, color, ventilation, etc. have a lot of influence on the effectiveness of the training. Even the food and the snacks can influence the perceptions of the trainings towards the training. Now, for example, when you talk about in a training module with the people from diverse backgrounds, each having a different food habit, then some people can feel the discomfort here. Hence, the trainer has to ensure that the physical settings also provide a good ambience for the learning. See, when you talk about the ambience of the learning, there are so many parameters, paradigms, frontiers, which the trainer and at the planning level have to be really worked upon. Why and how? Because certain things, if they are not worked upon, gives a lot of discomfort to the trainee, and the basic purpose of the training program is not achieved. The takeaways which have to be there will not be achieved. So hence, the trainer has to ensure, and taking into consideration and the main frame, all the important activities owing to which the trainee and the trainer both have to be in a very good comfort level. That kind of a comfort level is very important because they are the important takeaways. They are very important for the training program to be very effective. So hence, the trainer has to ensure that all kind of the physical settings provide a good ambience for the training. Now, taking it forward, it is fortunate that in the present times, most formal training programs, they do not have any kind of problems about the physical ambience. Most cities, towns, they have good hotels which provide the good conference and the boardrooms with all the modern facilities. The companies, they also have their own infrastructure where the physical facilities are created for the effective training. The use of the modern training aids is a part of the physical settings and can contribute significantly to the training effectiveness. The role of the training aids have to be discussed at length in the next following aspects. The morale and the commitment. they have a lot of very important role to play in the organizational effectiveness. Because if the morale and the commitment is absent from it, and it's the main ingredient for this kind of organizational effectiveness, without which the effectiveness is a dream, and if you want the dream to come true, they have to be there. That is the morale and the commitment. Now in the training, these psychological variables, they interfere with all the aspects, and the effect of these variables on the training is explained in the following discussions. So the first is perception. In order to be effective, the trainees must appreciate the need of the training. This will be shaped by their perception, determined by their past experiences with the training, and the trainees will learn only what they want to learn. Here, the halo effect, the selective recall, and the other consequences of perception will come into play. Now, the stereotyping also influences the training because the trainees can form a preconceived ideas about the courses and its content, and even the trainers. The trainer has to study the perceptions and take adequate measures to correct them, and if required, in order to make the training more effective. Now coming on to the second attribute, the second is an attitude. The attitude has a lot of influence on the learning, and if the trainees have a positive attitude towards the training, they are likely to exhibit a better behavioral modifications, and of course as desired by the training. So similarly, a negative attitude can do to reserve the work also. The trainer must judge the attitude of the people and create the conditions for securing a positive attitude. This could be achieved by a variety of measures such as counseling, making the learning more interesting, using a better teaching aids, providing the better incentives to the trainees to learn, and other related measures. The third important point for the training program and the module is the morale. Although the empirical evidences on the relationship of the morale and productivity shows the mixed results. So by going out of the logic, a high morale is likely to make a higher contribution towards the productivity. In the training, the morale of the trainees has a lot of effect on their learning, and in certain professions such as army, etc., where the morale has a lot of effect on the productivity, the trainers work hard to ensure that the trainees have a higher morale. A variety of measures can be taken to maintain a higher morale, which include the setting incentive plans, having higher team spirit, and more participation of the trainees. The next is your commitment. The commitment refers to the belongingness of the employees, and in training, the level of commitment would make the trainees more prone to learning. While there are lesser known methods for increasing the commitment, still counseling, etc., can be employed by the trainers to ensure a better commitment. Some trainers even use punishments such as means to extract the punishments and commitments, followed by the trainer has a major role to play in setting the climate and the tone of training, which should be well placed exercise. Now, as the trainers become more and more professional, they are undertaking these activities with the higher degrees of commitments. Now we are moving on to another paradigm, that is the pedagogy or the method. Learning and teaching is an art, and a pedagogy refers to art of a good teaching. The principle of teaching which have been developed by the educationist can be extrapolated to train the human resources in the professional organizations as well. While there are no set rules for better teaching, still some general principles have been evolved by the educators, which can be classified into two categories. One is a general principle and the other is a psychological principle. First, we'll discuss the general principles of teaching, and then we move on to the other ones. These are, when you talk about the general principles of training, These are general in nature and they have emerged from the general experiences and anecdotes. Some of the general principles are as follows. The first is the principle of definite aim. Training should start with a definite aim, and without aim you cannot start a training program. So there has to be a specific aim and objective owing to which you start a program, and it must be well planned and should not be ad hoc. That is, whatever comes to your mind you start that. No, it is not like that. It has to be very planned, very specific, and should not be ad hoc. And there must be a high degree of coherence between the objectives and the methodology of teaching. Only then will the training becomes more and more effective. Now we move on to the principle of activity. This means that the training is effective only when the trainees are made to do a particular task. Learning by doing brings about the desired behavioral modifications easily, and the trainees, they also exhibit a better recall of what has been taught to them. Hands-on learning means more participation of the trainees at the level of the cognitive domain as well as the activity domain. This principle can be applied in all the settings and at all the levels. Probably, this is the reason why most professional trainers make use of the simulations, case study approaches and other such techniques. So where there is a high involvement of the trainees. Next we have the principle of correlation. This principle implies that the trainer must correlate the learning with the actual life and also with the other subjects. This gives an impression that the training has an actual application and does not confine to the textbooks. This makes the training more practical in its approach, because textbooks are taught in the class, and if the training program is centering to that, it becomes little ineffective. So this gives an impression that the training has an actual application and does not confine to only textbooks. Certain out of textbooks content, some kind of instances, some kind of examples are there outside the textbook. So definitely this kind of a pedagogy makes the training more practical as far as the approach is concerned. Now, relating with the real life experiences which a trainee experiences daily in his life makes him understand the concepts very easily. Now, this is a better recall of the learning activities. Now, moving on to the fourth important part, that is the principle of planning. Planning involves selection, it involves division, it involves revision, it involves as following, and we will be explaining the selection, division and revision one by one. So, first we talk about the selection. Selection means that the teaching material and the teaching aids must be selected very carefully. This kind of selection and their selection is usually based on the instrumental objectives, a trainer ability to impart the knowledge and a trainee capacity to understand and assimilate the subject matter. Next we have a division. Division means breaking the chosen subject matter into the convenient and meaningful units in order to make it more understandable. This technique of dividing the subject matter into the units and the subunits facilitates the teaching learning process. Without proper division, teaching may remain indefinite, incoherent, confused, less comprehensible, and the matter arranged and selected should be properly graded and divided according to the trainee standard of attainment. Next we have revision. The assimilation of the knowledge entails a proper drill and practice. Revision helps in assimilation and helps the trainers to test the understanding of the trainees. Revision and recapitalization of the subject matter is a continuous process and must be planned while planning how a training session is to be conducted. The principle of flexibility and elasticity. The training cannot be rigid and stereotype activity. It must be flexible to accommodate the environmental stimuli. No two trainees or the trainers are the same, nor are two training climate and settings are the same. So the training schedules must be flexible enough to accommodate the resourcefulness, originality and the creativity of the trainer. Next we have the principle of experience. The past experiences of the trainees as well as the trainers, they provide a very necessary experience for the better learning. Objectives can be set according to these experiences. Now, if you have good experiences, that also has to be embedded in that module. If you have bad experiences, then also it has to be embedded in that module. The past experiences, whether they are experienced by the trainers or the trainees, they actually give a lot of good mileage as far as making the training program more and more effective. These experiences are priceless. If they are not a part and parcel of the training program, it is not going to be effective. So hence we say that the principle of experience is pivotal to design the training modules and the programs, and effective programs, of course. Next we are moving on to the principle of training centeredness. The trainees are the core of the training exercise. So they must be studied while designing any kind of a training program. Who the trainees are, what is their background, what kind of takeaways they want, what kind of knowledge dissemination they want, what kind of skills do they want. So some kind of a diligent deep activity has to be done before designing any kind of a training program. This is definitely going to again make a difference and give a lot of good mileage to make the training program and the module more and more effective. Now we move on to the eighth part, that is the principle of involvement. The training can become effective if there is a high involvement of the trainees. The instructional material and all other facilities, they have to be designed to secure a better involvement of the trainees. So training can be effective, if the trainees are not involved into that, so it is like a useless program. For a particular trainee to get involved, it has to be again very diligently designed so that they become happily a part of that and they get themselves involved into that. So the whole effectiveness of any kind of a training program, the instructional material and the facilities, they have to design to better secure and involve the trainees. Now we move on to the ninth principle of remedial trainings. Now this is definitely again of very, very good part of the training programs. How and why? Let us have a look on that. Training can be diagnostic as well as remedial. It can suggest the remedies to provide the problems faced by the training, and as well as it can be diagnostic to actually find out what the exact level of the trainees are. The trainer should remove the doubts of all the trainees and he should understand their difficulties and they try to remove them also. Now as far as the diagnostic and the remedial part is concerned, the both are very, very important for a training program. Like when you launch a particular training program, you would understand the levels of the people. It becomes diagnostic because you are going deep into it. You're trying to have the insights of that, and it is also remedial. Remedial in terms of if the trainer is having any kind of problems, if the trainees have got any kind of problems. So this part of the remedial will cover all these aspects of removing all the problems, all the doubts and all the any kind of issues they have as far as the training program is concerned. So he should understand their difficulties and they try to remove them also. Now we move on to the principle of progressiveness. Training must be progressive in nature. The training must, move from simple to complex subject. This implies that there should be a trend towards the progressiveness at the level of the trainers also. It must be progressive involvement in their performance. Slow and steady improvement is definitely better than a rapid learning and then forgetting everything at the end of the session. So there has to be a step-by-step learning as far as the module is concerned, program is concerned, effective program is concerned. If you give them more than what they can absorb, so what is the end result? By the end of the session, they would be forgetting everything. So definitely when you talk about a good training program, the trainers, the principle of progressiveness must be followed. The training must be progressive and the training must be from simple to complex, and this means that there should be a trend towards progressiveness at the level of the trainers also, and it must be progressive improvement in their performance. Slow and steady wins the race, and not forgetting the aspects is also very, very important. So let us have a recap of the general principles of teaching and the points which we have done till now. So let us have a recap. The first is the principle of definite aim. All the training modules and the programs, they must start with a particular program with a particular aim and objective. Now the principle of definite aim, training should start with a definite aim and it should be planned and should not be any kind of an ad hoc behavior. Now the principle of activity, this means that the training is effective only when the trainers are made to do so, and learning by doing brings about the desired behavioral modifications. Easy, and the trainees, they also exhibit a better recall of what they have been taught. Now when you call upon the principle of activity, this is also called as an hands-on work. Definitely practice makes a man perfect, and when it is said so, it definitely will bring about good behavioral modifications, and it will definitely bring a desired change as you want, because when you doing the things hands-on, it is definitely going to give a particular recall of what has been taught into them. The hands-on learning means more participation of the trainees at the level of cognitive domain as well as the activity domain. This particular principle applied in all the settings and at all the levels, and the probability, that is a reason why not professional trainers, they make use of simulations, case studies and other techniques wherein there is a high involvement of the trainees. They are so much involved into it. If you move on to an example which is also called as simulations, if you give them a case study, so they would try to relate their situation with that. So similar such techniques and methodologies and pedagogies are involved to make the training programs more and more effective. Next we have the principle of correlation. This principle implies that the trainer must correlate the learning with the actual life and also with the other subjects. This gives an impression that the training has an actual application and does not confine to the textbooks. This makes the training more practical in its approach. Now, relating with the real life experiences which a trainee experiences daily with his or her life makes him understand the concepts very easily. So this is a better recall of the learning activity. Now the principles of planning. The planning involves selection, division and revision, and explained below is a selection. Selection means that the teaching material and the teaching aids must be selected very carefully and should solve the purpose and of the particular objective for which the training program has been scheduled. And this selection is usually based on the instructional objectives, the trainer's ability to impart the knowledge, and the training capacity to understand and assimilate the subject matter. Then we have division. Division means the breaking and choosing a particular subject matter into a very convenient and meaningful units in order to make it more understandable. This particular technique of dividing the subject matter into units, then into subunits, it facilitates the teaching learning process. Without proper divisions, teaching may remain indefinite, incoherent, confused and less comprehensible. The matter arranged and selected should be properly graded and divided according to the trainee standards of the attainment. So this kind of, the second aspect is your revision. the assimilation of knowledge entails a proper drill and practice. Revision helps in the assimilation and helps the trainers to test the understanding of the trainees. Revision and recapitalization of the subject matter is a continuous process and must be planned while planning how a training session is to be conducted. The principle of flexibility and elasticity. The training cannot be rigid and stereotype activity. It must be flexible to accommodate the environmental stimuli. No two trainee or the trainers are the same, nor are the two training climates and the settings are also the same. So everything is diverse and having a diverse features. So the training schedules must be flexible enough to accommodate the resourcefulness, the originality and the creativity of the trainer. Next we have the principle of experience. The past experiences of the trainees as well as the trainers, they provide a necessary input for a better learning. The objective can be according to these experiences. Then we have a principle of training centeredness. The trainees are at the core of the training exercise, so they must be studied while designing any kind of a training program. The principle of involvement. The training can be very effective if there is a high involvement of the trainees. The instructional materials, the other facilities, they have to be designed to secure a better involvement of the trainees. Next we have a principle of remedial trainings. The training can be diagnostic as well as remedial. It can be, it can also suggest the remedies to various problems faced by the trainees. The trainer should remove the doubts of the trainees and he should understand their difficulties and try to remove them. Next we have the principle of progressiveness. Training must be progressive. Training must move from simple to complex subjects. This implies that there should be a trend towards progressiveness at a level of the trainees also. It must be progressive involvement in their performance. Slow and steady improvement is better. And of course, rapid learning is not good because it tantamounts to forgetting everything at the end of the training sessions. Next we have the principle of democracy. By virtue of positions, trainer enjoys a superior position over the trainees. But in order to have an effective training programs, proper democratic principles must be followed. There should be a high degree of participation of everybody in the planning and conducting of a training program. Proper feedback must be taken objectively by the trainers. The trainers must treat all the trainees as equal and they should pay equal attention to all of them. Now there should be no biases or preferences to some individuals or the group of individuals. So now we are moving to a very pertinent topic, that is the psychological principles of training. Psychological principles of training make the training more stimulating and effective by taking into consideration the psychology of the trainees. This is definitely going to make the training programs very effective. Now, some of the general psychological principles of the training are as follows. The first is the principle of motivation and interest. No learning can take place without proper motivation. The trainees must understand that the training should be of advantage to them so that they give higher propensity to learn. The training must result into some of the incentives to them and they can be both tangible as well as intangible. A good trainer arouses the curiosity to keep the trainees more motivated to learn. Next we have the principles of cooperation. This is also one of the psychological aspects which has to be embedded into the psychological programs of the training to make it more and more effective. So what does it mean, the principle of cooperation? It means what? Successful learning entails the proper cooperation by the trainers. This makes the ambience more congenial for learning. The trainers must not be unduly strict and should show the understanding and concern of the trainees. What is the principle of creation? The training becomes more effective. It is combined with the recreation. Enjoyment arouses trainees' interest, leading to a better understanding and recall. So recreation has a particular place and at also the heart for the successful commencement of the training programs. Next we have the principle of feedback and reinforcement. All the successful trainings, they have a proper feedback mechanisms which reinforces the learning exercise. Feedback in the form of recall of the knowledge must be followed by the positive reinforcement by the trainer. This makes the trainee more motivated to learn. Next we have the principle of group dynamics and self-learning. People differ in their behavior when they are in groups. A trainer should be able to understand the formation of the groups, that is, on what parameters the groups are formed. Within the trainee should be able to see how this will interfere with the training process. If the group creates a better ambience, they can be encouraged, otherwise they can be controlled. So self-learning is far more effective mode of learning. The trainees decide their own learning schedules and make an effort themselves. So this is perhaps the most important thing one can think of. Such self-learning can become effective when the trainees have a capacity and a capability to work independently. Now we are moving on to the maxims of the training. The difficult ideas can be understood in the light of the easier concepts. Besides the principle of the good training, educators have formulated certain maxims which are used for making the training more effective. These maxims, they guide the trainers how to proceed while imparting the training. The common maxims of the teaching are proceeding from known to unknown, from simple to complex, from concrete to abstract, from particular to general, from analysis to synthesis, and from whole to parts. So this is amazing. The first is proceed from unknown to known. That is, from if you have things known to you, then it is unknown. So proceed from known to unknown. The trainers should proceed progressively from the things which are known to the things which are unknown. Exploring certain new parameters. The law of working of the mind is the mind interprets the new knowledge in terms of old. Hence, a trainer should not be introduced to the new topics suddenly. He won't be able to have a good understanding and recall of such subjects and topics. He should start from the known facts and slowly move on to the unknown or a new concept. So this maxim economizes the trainer's efforts and facilitates the learning process. Then we have from proceed from simple to complex. Just as the above principle, the trainer should proceed from simple to complex subjects progressively. Easy ideas are well understood and form the basis of. Then it has from proceed from concrete to abstract. The concrete to a tangible fact are well under the knowledge of the trainees. So they are better understood by them. The abstract facts are relatively more difficult to grasp. So hence the progressive learning from concrete to abstract can make the entire process of the learning easier. Next we have from proceed to particular general. The trainees might have difficulty in understanding the generalizations. So the trainer can start with some case studies of few examples which can be extrapolated to become general theories or the facts. Particular is an inductive method while general is a deductive method, and both have to go side by side. However, the process of induction is easier and it is better if it is used before the deductive approach. Then we have to proceed from analysis to synthesis. Analysis makes a trainee more competent in his work and he is able to solve the complexities of the workplace. Synthesis is a step higher to make the knowledge more definite and more fixed. Effective training starts from analysis and ends up to enabling the trainers to synthesize the whole minds in their minds. So it has next from proceed from parts to whole. Understanding the whole system might become difficult for the trainees. So it is better that it is understood in parts. The parts have a lesser complexities and can be comprehended easily by the trainees. From the above discussions, it is clear that the effective training is not a pre-designed prescription but depends upon a large number of the factors. The general principles and the maxims to provide the guidelines for making the learning easier, but these are not substitute to a trainee's creativity, ingenuity and the skill of delivering the knowledge across the trainees. So the very objective of the training is to help people learn, attain knowledge, update existing knowledge, and if the process of dissemination of the knowledge is supported with the help of the training aids, the training outcome can be more effective, and the proper use of training aids or instructional material can really help and enhance the effectiveness of the training process. The use of the training aids in the learning process is expected to achieve the following: add variety of the learning process and help to maintain involvement motivation. It benefits the learners while learning style responds better to one approach than the other. It provides stimuli not available without their use and encourage interaction between the tutor and the taught. They act as a valuable lesson plan to the trainer, facilitating the planning and preparation before the training session. So these kind of advantages can be realized in a practice only when these aids are chosen and used, paying a due regard to the objectives of the training and characteristics of the learners, the characteristics of the various aids available, how the aids will be integrated with the other facets of the training, etc. Now the planning the training aids themselves. It ensures a careful planning is very important in achieving the objectives of any learning activity. In order to ensure the optimum use of the training aids, it is often useful for the users to ask some specific questions. What are we trying to achieve? What am I trying to achieve? Who will use these aids? What are the characteristics of the users? What are the essential content of the aids? How will the concepts be developed? How can be aids used? So there are certain common training aids. After considering the above question, the use of training aid is decided. There are many training aids available to help the trainers to deliver a successful training. They can be classified into a number of broad categories. Some of the common training aids are as follows: the printed material, all text, all handouts like non-projected materials, a variety of visual display material, for example, the model, photographic printers, posters, flip cards, marker boards, etc. Still the projected material, video materials, audio tapes, compact discs, broadcast radio, etc. Then we have a computer-based material. So these involve the application of computer alone and a computer used in conjunction with the other material, for example, a compact disc, video disc and audio tapes. So thus enabling a multimedia training aids to be constructed. The above classification of the training aids does not draw the watertight boundaries between the various types of training aids. So there may be some overlapping between the different categories, and some of the most important training aids are as follows: the overhead projectors, the OHP. The image is usually drawn and acetate view foil placed on the plate of OHP. Even a model, a real object can also be placed instead of a transparent sheet. Then the images can be prepared or draw in real time. So one of the typical uses of the overhead projectors, they show the structures and objectives of the whole training sessions so the learners know where they should go. And it also helps a list of major points to draw attention, like provide a focus what is being discussed. It also helps to collect and display the points and the opinions from the learners. The trainers can write an transparency sheet and can record the feedback on the slips of acetate, which can immediately be displayed. So the transparency sheets can also be photocopied on a later distribution. The OHP is particularly used for the model experiments, magnetic fields, and it is also a very effective tool to focus upon the attention of the learners. So for realizing the full benefits of OHP, adequate attention should be given to integrate it with the training sessions. And the next is we have a paper-based material such as the handouts, the textbooks, the maps, the diagrams, etc. and as a note-making guide to encourage the interaction and to provide the prescribed readings, how the printed material is very crucial, and distributing a handout which is subsequently not used or referred to is useless. And as with all the training aids, the use of the printed materials must be carefully planned and integrated into a training session. So the full benefit of the paper-based material will be realized and if properly integrated with the training sessions, and of course preparation has to be very carefully done. Then we can have some handouts, some mind maps, and some kind of interactive handouts, and the aim of the interactive handouts is also to encourage and make the learning process more and more effective. So because it is having a lot of attentional aspects, didactic effect and retentional aspect. So definitely the flip charts are also very important. They are basically a large sheet of the paper hung from the support bar so that they are flipped backward and forwards and can be used similarly as a marker boards and the overhead projectors also. Then we have already talked about the handouts. The learners can record the feedback on the flip chart paper which can be immediately displayed like a diagram, etc. So when we have a marker boards, then we have different materials. So now the last part of this lecture, that is the summary part. So let us have a recap of whatever we have done till now. The effectiveness of any training is a direct consequences of a climate settings within which it is conducted. The organizational climate is enduring, having the quality of its internal environment, which is experienced by its members. It influences their behavior and can be described in terms of the values of a particular set of characteristics of the organization. The major characteristics of good and healthy organizational climate is a tendency at all the levels of the organization to treat people as most of important resource, and there is a perception that developing and competencies in the employees is the job of every manager. Training climate has two components, physical and psychological, and the perception of the people, their attitude, morale, commitment has also a very important role to play in the effectiveness part of the training programs. And last but not the least, this approach entails a breaking of the course, allowing a choice of modules, and a proper planning can make the training programs more effective, more useful, and therefore the trainers must follow these general rules, maxims and approaches to make the training more effective and enjoyable learning process.